Hello, and welcome to episode 8 of the Nerds of the North podcast. Today, host number 1, as always, Matt, and then host number 2,
Nick.
And today we're going to be discussing the season finale for Falcon and the Winter Soldier. We'll also be discussing the second to last episode of Invincible, also just released. And after that, we'll be talking a little bit about what's going on in the world of television and movies, things that are coming up, and then some rumors that are going around about some potential properties and actors, just goings on in the world of media. So
percolating underneath the surface.
Indeed. So Nick, why don't you kick us off with our discussion on Falcon and the Winter Soldier, the season finale? What'd you think?
Well, this is pretty exciting because this is the last episode of this show. So we can finally kind of discuss it as a whole.
Mm-hmm. A whole.
Yeah. So that's a word, a phrase.
A terrible phrase, but yeah.
Stop insulting the whole, man.
Oh God, it gets worse.
Well, let's just start with this episode. Yeah, I mean, it's over, and it was a show, and things happened in it that I enjoyed, and things happened in it that made me want to smash my own face against the wall and scream and wake up the neighbors because I'm just so frustrated with certain aspects of the show. At the beginning of this blog, I specifically, for me, I don't know what I think I was just watching the show and I thought of that scene in Captain America: Civil War where like Sam and Bucky they just got beat by Spider-Man, and Bucky said something like, "Oh, you why didn't you do that before?" And Sam's like, "I hate you."
Yeah.
And for some reason, that's kind of my relationship with the show. I feel like I'm like the show's like Bucky, and I'm like Sam, and like there's some kinship there, and we're having a good time. But at the same time, I kind of like I hate some parts of the show. I just hate it. And
why are you the way you are?
Exactly. Yeah. So going into it, I guess a little bit, I guess we'll start talking about the things I personally liked, and this is my list, not Matt. So he is encouraged to disagree with me because we haven't discussed this at all before the podcast. Well, too much before we started this. So the things
believe
I
you
liked,
me, there are differences.
There's disagreements. So things I liked. I really liked John Walker as Captain America / U.S. agent. I thought the actor Wyatt Russell did a pretty good job. I like the redemption arc. I know a lot of people thought it was kind of weirdly rushed or kind of felt off, but I personally liked it. I just like when a character falls and then picks himself back up again. Here I quoted, what is he? Mercy bears richer fruit than strict justice, which apparently is a quote of Abraham Lincoln. I did not look that up. That's just something Bucky said to John when they were walking off. I'm like, damn, like Bucky has a pretty good understanding of history. He wasn't alive that long.
Mm-hmm.
Like, do these people just like watch or read old history books on their time off or what? But
it was never clear to me like if there was some like background training or like knowledge gathering that happened with Bucky as the Winter Soldier. Like clearly he had a lot of physical prowess and his strength and his fighting abilities, but yeah, like was he also studying U.S. history during that time?
Well, I mean,
I don't know.
When you think about it, well, okay, so he probably grew up like what in like the 1930s,
I mean, like during World War II.
So it's possible that like his. Sorry about my dog. It's possible that he knew people that fought in the Civil War. They would have been old at that point. So who knows? We're getting off topic. Anyway, so I do like John Walker. I think he was pretty cool. I mean, he obviously kind of jerk, but I like that about him. I feel like I'm not being very eloquent when I'm saying this, but yes, I did think that looking looking back at the show probably like 6 months from now, I think I'm going to remember the John Walker stuff fondly. What is your opinion, Matt?
No, actually, I agree very much on that front. Yeah, Wyatt Russell, I thought did a really good job. I feel somewhat universally that that's kind of been the case with people's opinions on him, is that he did a good job playing John Walker and bringing this character to the big screen is
Or
a
the
cool
small
opportunity for
screen?
him. The small screen, right?
Yeah.
Yeah, no, like I think he did a really good job. I do think, yeah, I think this show, when we compare it to WandaVision, because I mean the comparison has to be made
You got to make that comparison.
because like they're the two things, like the two
No, you're
Marvel
totally
TV
right.
shows,
Yeah,
right? Yeah, but
I was
like
being facetious. Yeah,
no,
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 you're
yeah,
absolutely right.
and like you got to make that comparison, right? Because they're the two things we have, as you know, to counter each other. And I think WandaVision felt really good up until like maybe the last two episodes, and then that's kind of where things started to feel like maybe a little rushed. um Whereas I feel like the feeling of being rushed story wise was kind of all over the place in Falcon and the Winter Soldier. And but I feel like John Walker's character was one of those narrative or was one of those narratives that didn't feel that way to me. Like everything kind of felt like it happened when it should. Um, the fact that I think Marvel's doing a good job of like, yeah, making more morally gray characters, because like I don't. This is not a direct comparison of U.S. Agent or John Walker to Thanos, but like when you look at Thanos as a character, you do kind of feel for him. They definitely made him as a character to have some. You could understand where he's coming from. His means and his objectives seem homicidal, but like his his drive to do that, like can make sense to somebody from like a far enough out, zoomed out, you know. And I think John Walker is the same way. Like his what he wants to be accomplishing and what he wants to do is something you can relate with. Um, but just the means in which he does it, uh, and he had enormous shoes to fill, and so the world's eye, you know, the eyes of the world were on him, and unfortunately he failed spectacularly as Captain America. But mm, I think this sets him up really nicely to be U.S. agent and for him to kind of be part of an anti-team of heroes. Maybe
Yeah.
not anti-hero, but something
I,
along those lines. The
I mean,
anti-Avengers.
I think that's fair to say they are a team of anti-heroes.
Mm-hmm.
So, yeah, I think, I mean, he would definitely be like the ersatz Captain America in any like Dark Avengers team that he was a part of.
Mm-hmm.
Because I still feel like if he's part of like the Thunderbolts, for instance,
Mm-hmm.
he'll still try and be like the golden boy, you know, to,
Right.
to use a stupid term. Like he'll still see himself as a representation of America, but just like a dark kind of representation, even though he's
Mm-hmm.
not totally evil, obviously. But um, anyway,
But yeah, no, I think yeah, that was a very good part of the show, if not one of the best parts.
yeah. The thing I also think they did a pretty good job with was Isaiah Bradley's story, as well as Sam becoming, you know, quote unquote Black Captain America.
Mm-hmm.
I thought that was pretty well done actually, and yeah, the line that I think really sold me as for Sam becoming Captain America, and it's still hard for me to even call him Captain America right now. I still like in my head, I still think of him as Falcon, which you know
Mm-hmm.
isn't necessarily, you know, I think it's going to take everyone a little while to get used to it, but
Oh yeah.
he has, when he was talking to Isaiah Bradley, he said, "We built this country, bled for it. I'm not going to let anybody tell me I can't fight for it. Not after what everybody before me went through, including you." I thought that was pretty good. Like it kind of finally, I got some clarity on why Sam wants to become Captain America, which I had been wanting for a while.
Mm-hmm.
Um, and yeah, I think consistently like his relationship with Isaiah Bradley and just the conversations he had with him and Isaiah's backstory, I thought was some of the best like thematically written and acted parts of the entire show. And which I mean overall that was probably the most important thing to get right when you really think about it. Um and just like I said here, like yeah, I mean some parts of it, like even this stuff, it's hard to criticize, because this stuff means a lot to a lot of people, and American history is fraught with a lot of grayness. Like this, it's not black and white. There's been evil things America's done, and there's been really good things that America has done. And I think that's why Sam will continue to fight for it as Captain America.
Mhm.
Um,
You
and
can
yeah,
feel strongly about how good America is in comparison to whomever or whatever, but you can still understand that it can improve. And I think that's where Sam's coming from, is that like like we've fought this hard already to get to where we are. We need to like leverage the work we've put in to make things better. And I think that yeah, like Sam's opinion on that is very uh, is correct, and I think that yeah, like having that be his motivation is really cool.
I really like this picture for some reason. I don't know why.
Yeah, that's one. That's a strong boy.
Yeah. An article I read by The Verge I thought was pretty salient. Obviously, it's titled "The Falcon and the Winter Soldier is a Blueprint for the Next Decade of Marvel Superheroes," and essentially, this show is like setting up like a template or a blueprint for Marvel moving forward as well, with like more diverse characters taking up the mantle of the previous characters that were, for the most part, mostly white, at least the
Mhm.
white males, except in the case of Scarlett Johansson, who is a white female. But
Mhm.
in general, yeah, the Avengers were mostly white men. So I
Mhm.
think Marvel is moving towards a legacy, a legacy character model, which they already started with their comic line with controversy, which I think there's an argument to be made on both ends on whether that's a good idea or not. I can see both
Mhm.
sides. But yeah, so like going forward, you're gonna see the Iron Man mantle being taken up by Riri Williams. Is that her last
Mhm.
name?
Yeah, yeah.
Yeah, a young black girl, and you could see Thor being taken up by Natalie Portman. Perhaps that's might be happening. I'm not sure.
Kind of seems to be the direction they're heading,
Yeah,
at least based on the casting. And
and then the Hulk mantle could be taken up by She-Hulk, which is obviously a she woman. um, so yeah, I think going forward into the future, I think this show, I think it gets a lot of criticism, rightly so, but also it's important to remember this is kind of like the first one, because it was
Mhm.
the first one actually. I think started. The WandaVision came out first, but I mean, overall, I think yeah, there's definitely parts that could have been better, but
Mhm.
it was the first one, so I mean, maybe it's too harsh. We're being too harsh on it. I don't know, but
I mean, I think it's appropriate to be, critical of it. Like, it can still be good. Like, I think the overall product at the end of the day um, is good. Like, I think that it's miles ahead of some things on TV right now, and miles behind others.
yeah, I mean, the production value was excellent.
Hmm.
It still didn't feel like a Marvel movie to me, but
Hmm.
there was some stuff where it's like, wow, this is on television. I think
Right.
we as an audience have become sort of acclimated to extremely high production shows that
Hmm.
we kind of forget how amazing this is, that it's coming to us like as the first meet like the first I'm drawing a blank, like the first thing we're watching on is our television and not the big screen.
Hmm. Oh yeah, no, like I think it's a tremendous achievement in that regard, and I think like One Division's the same way. Like to get that level of production value out of a TV show rather than a movie, to have that many assets used for a television show, I think is pretty tremendous.
Yeah.
And yeah, like I don't think Falcon and the Winter Soldier or Captain America in the Winter Soldier um, yes, quite stands up to WandaVision in its full vision, but I do think that it does a really good job of telling the story it sought out to tell. I think there might have been some issues just because of the pandemic and all that kind of made the pacing on some characters and like what could have been more character driven stuff get put by the wayside. Um, Kind of like in the case of Carly Morgenthau, which we'll probably get into.
Yeah.
But yeah, no, like I think you're right in that they're going to be moving forward because I immediately think of Shang-Chi. Like they're diversifying the characters a lot from the literally, yeah, just the kind of blanket white person team that was the original Avengers. And I think it'll be really cool to see like what Shang-Chi's movie is like. Um, and then like even getting into the Eternals, like we have Kumail Nanjiani on in that film. He's an actor that I've always really enjoyed. Um,
Yeah, that movie should be very diverse.
mhm. And and then yeah, then like the same thing, yeah, with like She-Hulk. Yeah, like I think there's a lot of room to diversify the cast without it feeling cheap.
Yeah. Well, and
It's gonna
also
be a
too, the one
meaningful
I forgot
change.
was Hawkeye.
Oh
Um,
yeah.
yeah, because the upcoming Disney Plus show is Haley Steinfeld's Kate Bishop is probably going to take up that mantle, I
Hmm.
believe. So
And but yeah, no, I think ultimately that this show nailed it in a lot of ways. And there could have been some improvements here and there, but then you're getting nitpicky and
oh, I mean, I will get nitpicky coming up here. We just haven't gotten
yeah,
to that
no,
first.
we live to be nitpicky here.
So that's good. So yeah, the last thing I'll say that I enjoyed was Sam and Bucky's bromance. I
Hmm.
know starting out on this, I was kind of skeptical why they were so antagonistic towards each other. I still
Hmm.
don't really understand why they didn't quite get along at first. Um, but by the end of it, I was enjoying their kind of like, there's like Bucky hanging out with Sam's family, and like the kids are hanging off his arm, and like there's that still that kind of like cheesy music while they just kind of like hang out by the boat. And
Hmm.
they're like by the end they're like buddies, which I appreciate. Though I will say I do think Bucky was slightly shortchanged a little bit with especially with this conversation with Yori. I think that went really too fast. I didn't get the emotional upwelling that I was expecting. Um, but I guess going forward, there's rumors that Bucky might take up the Nomad mantle and have his own show on Disney Plus. So there's that.
Yeah, the Nomad thing is I had not heard that, and I think that would be a little weird, but it could be good for all I know.
Yeah, I mean, it's just kind of like we don't really know what Bucky's place going forward is going to be in the MCU because he doesn't really have. He's always been like the perennial sidekick. He hasn't really had
Hmm.
his own like thing. So
Yeah, and for I mean, and Nomad as a character in regards, I mean, he is Steve Rogers, or more that Steve Rogers is Nomad, but like his purpose more as a character or as a temporary identity for Steve is that he feels disconnected from, from America, feeling as a warrior for patriotism, I guess if you want to put it that way. He feels disconnected from the world that he's now a part of from when he went under and being frozen to now. And and so feeling that disconnect, he takes on the mantle of Nomad, and so he can continue to do what he does, but it puts him in a more morally gray area. At least that's been my understanding of Nomad as a character. But Bucky never has really felt that patriotic. Like, so for him to take up Nomad would seem a little strange, but it might just be a convenient placeholder, if anything. So,
yeah, I mean, I think he is patriotic. It's even brought up in this episode that when he's having that phone call with Carly, he's like, yeah, she's like, you never have laid down your life for a larger cause. And I think he was in World War II, so I would imagine he's pretty patriotic in that regard. And the shield does mean a lot to him. And actually, I think that's even brought up in 1 or 2 episodes this season where they're like, this guy's like super patriotic. For what it's worth, though, I think even if he is, I don't know if he's really had that moment where he like questions his patriotism. So.
Right. Also, Carly throwing that line out there to Bucky, like, just feels so wildly, like,
yeah, it's like so unjustified because literally,
yeah,
like Bucky
like,
has
what the hell
laid
does
his
she
life
know?
down so many times for
Right?
like
Yeah.
a larger cause.
I remember feeling like, I think, justifiably annoyed at that comment of hers when it happened. So, but anyway.
Yeah. All right. Things I was neutral on. Sharon Carter as the power broker. Oh yeah, I forgot. Yeah, she said that freaking stupid line again. You know, when you came to Madripoor, you reminded me of a young me.
Yeah,
I'm sorry. Why do they always say that crap? I'm just like, come up with something more interesting.
Isn't that just the laziest bit of writing? Because yeah, like Carly uses that same phrase with Sam's sister Sarah, and it's like,
Yeah.
but why? Like that they have nothing in common. Like, what are you fucking talking about? Like, it doesn't make any sense.
Yeah, it's like just some like evil villain like machinations or something. Like, okay. Or it's like it's almost at a certain level they're like putting themselves above the other person. Like that's exactly what it is. I don't know. I'm just not even gonna pay attention to it. I just feel it's so cliche and it bugs me.
It is. It's very cliche.
But yeah, so I know a lot of people are upset with this reveal, and they actually are upset enough that they think that Sharon might be a Skrull. But as I say here, like I just don't care. I guess like I like I don't care enough about her character to get all worked up about it. I will say though, I do think it was not that good of a reveal. It was too telegraphed. Like throughout the whole like when she got introduced, the first episode she introduced, they set her up as kind of like, oh, she has something else going on, and it just seemed too obvious that it'd be the power broker. But I guess she just is a power broker. Yeah.
No, I agree. Like it felt so ridiculously choreographed as to be way too obvious to be the conclusion. But that was literally exactly what it was. And that's all there really was to it. It's like, well, okay.
Yeah.
I guess moving on then. Like
I feel like the internet keeps doing this where like the internet collectively finds out like what the secret is the very first moment the secret is like the question is proposed by the show. The internet collectively says, okay, here's the answer, and then the episode comes out like you finally find out what the answer was, and it turned out to be the thing that people think is like the worst answer, like
right.
And then everyone's disappointed. It's kind of like the Ralph Boner thing because everyone was like, well, he could just be your neighbor or some stupid thing like that. And everyone's like, no, it can't be that. Like, that's too dumb. And then he's just our neighbor. And people are like, oh, fuck.
Right.
I curse. Sorry, world. I don't usually.
How could we do this to us? You know, like yeah, no, I think you're right. Like, I mean, what's that phrase? Like the simplest answer is often the truth or whatever.
It's
like that Sherlock
Occam's
Holmes
razor, I believe.
Yeah,
Occam's razor. Yeah.
Like it just stood the reason that like, oh man, they've brought up this power broker character a lot, and it's always in relation to Sharon. I wonder if Sharon's the power broker.
Yeah.
Roll credits, and that was the whole thing.
Yeah. I don't know. Do you have a strong feeling about it either way, Matt?
I mean, I was surprised that they did that, but only for the reasons we've talked about, and that it just seemed a little too on the nose.
Yeah.
And but yeah, like she's not a bad character, but yeah, I think that you mentioned in your blog that moment of her walking away from the Capitol building being like, she might as well have been like Snidely from like those old, like the mustachioed bad guy, like, I'm going to sell the state secrets.
I know, it was just so like, oh my god, it's just it's so cliche. honestly, in
And
that moment too, like I just know, like if we know anything about the U.S. government, specifically like with the revelations from like Edward Snowden,
mhm.
they are listening to her freaking phone. And like she just walks out like of the government building. I don't know what it was. Maybe I should know, but then she pulls out her phone like it's like, come on, lady. Like at least wait till you're like have a secure spot where you know no one's listening to you.
Right. Yeah. It felt a little too like she couldn't have gotten into her car at least or something. It'd been like the plane's in motion.
Yeah.
But no,
Yeah.
like as she's walking out, yeah. But yeah, like I would tend to agree. It's a thing that happened. Let's just move on. Like the show's, it's not any worse for it, but it's not any better for it either.
I don't know, maybe this is one we're gonna disagree on, but Sam's strange speech to the nameless diplomats. They're literally nameless. Apparently in the credits, the senator's just like US
He's
senator, some stupid, he doesn't even
yeah,
get a
just
name.
senator, right?
Yeah. I at the time, like honestly, when I was watching the show, like at midnight or whenever it finally like came out, and I'm like, oh my god, this like scene, I can't even handle it. And
Hmm.
I think the issue with it is just it's so dreamlike. It's like
Hmm.
these two people are like the two diplomats are just standing there. Sam walks up, like it goes completely quiet. You can't hear any sirens or people talking in the background,
Hmm.
or or like because there was just a terrorist act that just happened, so obviously there's going to be chaos and people like in pain or injured and stuff. It just is like completely quiet, and then Sam just like goes into this like soapbox moment that goes on. I feel like goes on like probably too long. I think it goes on maybe like 2 minutes too long,
Hmm.
and I just it drove me up the wall. But then like I thought about it a little bit more, and I will say this, I did like it more upon rewatch, but it does seem
Sure.
like something that would play out like in a like I feel like I could open up a comic book and that scene would have play out in a comic book. So in that regard, I'm okay with it. But when I was watching it, I was like, this is just so it's like a dream like it's like a dream. It doesn't
Hmm.
even seem real, and that's what I think bugged me about it. Just did not seem like something that would actually happen in the real world. And this is a television show, obviously, but my suspension of disbelief wasn't there yet, where I could just accept this as something that actually happens. So
Sure. No, actually, I don't disagree with you that much on that point. You know what it felt like to me, honestly, was like this felt like this is the moment that every Karen like dreams for in her head. Like she's the Manchurian candidate standing in a grocery store giving her piece as to why she doesn't have to wear a mask, and then the story ends with and everyone clapped. Like that's kind of that was the vibe I was getting from this speech, because like it just felt it like he's not wrong in any regard, and there's not like a lot of like arguments to be had until maybe a little bit later, in that like it's a complicated problem. but but yeah, like it just felt preachy, doesn't feel right, but I guess for lack of a better word, it feels
yeah.
preachy.
Well, I think that one of the issues too, because that speech is wrapped up with Carly Morgenthau, which she's a
Hmm.
pretty annoying character that no one really cares about. At least I don't know anyone that was attached to that particular character. Maybe there's someone out
Hmm.
there. Um, and also, what was I gonna say? Oh man, I had another point here. What was it? Oh, geez, that's gone now. But yeah, it's like wrapped up with like Carly Morgenthau,
Yeah.
and it
Well,
just
and
yeah.
hot take, maybe don't like as your one of your literal first televised moment as Captain America, like have sympathy for a terrorist. I don't know.
I mean, yeah,
Like
and he has a point about but yeah, she was like she was. You can't
mhm.
really
There's no argument to be
if
had
someone
there.
does something that like
Hmm.
that you blow up a building for a political cause. Like I think that's like yeah, it's she's doing it for a reason, but you could literally make the case for anybody then that they're fighting for something that I don't really care about that. I remember what I was gonna say now. What I was gonna say is like it just to me it almost like seemed like too on point too. It's like okay, well here's Sam. and here's what the show is about. Okay,
Mhm.
audience, here it is now. And it's like I felt like it would have been stronger without it, because like it almost seems like it's hand holding the show's message to the audience in that moment.
Mhm.
Which I never really like. I don't know anyone who likes that, where like some characters just come out and have a discussion. And you're like, oh, okay, well, here's the point of the show. You
Right.
know, it's like it seems it's almost breaking that fourth wall. You know, in that
Right.
moment.
It's like they turn to the camera and go, okay, here's what's happening in this scene.
Yeah, that's exactly what it. And you know, I think that's my issue with the show overall, is that it's almost like some things are just so telegraphed and so obvious that it's like it almost breaks that fourth wall.
Hmm.
And like that's when I kind of lose like a show and anything that's well done, like as far as story wise, you should not think about, oh, this is a TV show. And this show is constantly reminding me that it's a TV show. Like you should just get caught up with the story and not think about, at least that's how the best things I've watched are. You're just like, oh man, okay, I'm getting really interested in this and these people.
Right.
Yeah.
You aren't driven to like be hypercritical of it in the moment. Maybe in a moment after you're done watching, you go, oh, I wonder why they did it that way or something.
Yeah. Or I mean, in a positive way, like some shows like WandaVision, for instance, I'd be like, holy cow, like how did they do that? That's really crazy how they were able to make this show. You know,
Hmm.
a show within a show like that. It's really interesting.
Hmm.
Like that's a positive, but I never really got that from this show at all. But
Yeah, I feel like, well, 'cause, like you were saying, and you have been saying up until this point, that like Sam just kind of felt a little aimless. Like we didn't really feel, or you didn't feel like a lot of conviction in like what he was doing. And I feel like this was the moment. Like the whole show, Sam had his fingers on his chin and was thinking things through, and then his moment to let out all of his thoughts and feelings about the entirety of what's been going on in this show was that speech. It's like he held it up and built it up to that point and then just let it all out at once. And I think it would have maybe behooved the showrunners to maybe let more of that out, to drip feed us a little bit more of like Sam's inner machinations.
yeah, I mean,
Because
I'm kind of like a salty old man sometimes, so no one was probably feeling the same way I was. But yeah, I definitely felt like a certain sort of aimlessness to Sam, which honestly that might be of where he was as a character. But at the
Mhm.
same time, it's like not that interesting to the audience, especially I don't know. I just like, especially when you don't really know who he is or what he stands for.
Mhm.
Like if we knew that and he's being aimless, then you can be kind of be like, oh, okay, you know, he's really a good guy, and obviously he is a good guy. But I just didn't ever get that from him, or I'm like, oh man, he just needs to find his way. Like it's just he was never that interesting for me to care whether he found his way or not. So,
Yeah, no, I tend to agree. Like, I think the speech was a little overboard. Um, like it's fine, I guess, but yeah, I think they overdid it a little bit. And though I will say that I think it's appropriate for him to have, because it did have kind of a rehearsed feeling to it, but he's probably been mulling over
yeah,
you know, the consequences of their actions, just everything they've been fighting for and against during the whole show run. And probably his interactions with Carly, colored his opinion in a way. And so for him to come to that conclusion isn't surprising. I just think that it maybe could have been a little bit of a shorter speech, because you're right, it just felt a little long.
yeah. There's just something about it, and I agree with you. I feel like it was appropriate to have something like that in there, but it just didn't feel natural.
Hmm. Yeah, it
Um,
didn't feel super natural. Yeah, I think it's a good way
I
to put
guess
it.
we're moving on to the things I didn't like, because I feel like I've been harping on it because the things I was neutral on. I still am
Mhm.
neutral on the his speech, by the way. Like I hope like that comes across. Not that it really matters, but I am more neutral on it.
Mhm.
Um, things I disliked, I think we'll agree on this one. Is the flag smashers.
Yeah, just kind of
Yeah,
a wet fart of a villain or like organization, I guess.
yeah. Man, I don't know. I just feel like the main Carly Morgenthau never felt like a threat I don't know. I can't even tell you. Like I don't even know. I feel like we've really run this flag smasher conversation into the ground, so I don't know how much
Yeah.
we actually need to cover it though.
It's
But
just, yeah, I think this character in particular, Carly, and everything with the flag smashers is like the biggest victim of the issues having to do with COVID over the past year. Like, um, because she just felt she she never felt that important. And then every time she did have something important, quote unquote, to say, it felt really hollow. Um, and like I'm so over this narrative of, well, like I'm the good guy, right, when they're so clearly not the good guy. There's just like, she's, I guess she's supposed to feel like the sympathetic character. I just didn't care though. It's like, you're murdering people for what? Like,
yeah. Well, something Sam said too during a speech, he's like, look at what you drove like a teenage girl to do. And I just never
mhm,
got the teenage girl vibe off of her.
no. Yeah,
Yes.
yeah, to try and sell me on the fact that she's a teenage girl, like, again, this is like a suspensive disbelief thing. But yeah, like, I never got that vibe either. It's like, did she seem like she didn't know what the hell she was doing? Oh, absolutely. Teenage though? No.
Yeah. I think we also mentioned too that we both kind of felt the same way during her death scene. We're just kind of like, because she says like I'm sorry while she dies in Sam's arms, and I know my thought while this was happening, and I think I actually said this out loud. I'm like, I don't care.
No, I agree. Like, I wasn't really that sad. Like, I didn't feel anything. I just was like, well, I
I
guess
felt,
we've
if anything,
closed
a
up
certain,
that story.
I felt a certain sort of jubilance. So
It's
also when her gang of merry men got blown up in the car, I'm like, oh man, thank you. I don't want to see these people ever again in this
yeah,
universe.
it feels, yeah, it felt like a weird way to deal with that too. Like, I know it was Zemo wanting to, or like finishing the job, I guess, but like, I don't really know what his whole beef with the flag smashers was in the first place.
Well, they're
Like,
super soldiers, and he has like a thing against super soldiers. But I also
well,
thought that too. I'm like, well, is he going to go after Bucky and John now? You know?
yeah, right. Like, it would have felt kind of more appropriate for him to go after one of those two versus this kind of aimless group that weren't super soldiers for quite a while. Um, but like, now they've awoken this beast with Zemo. And it's like, oh, well, now I'm going to go after the flag smashers. And then it just shows him in his prison cell being so happy that they blew up. And it's like, well, all right. Like, it feels, that has felt like a way for the showrunners to be like, okay, we're done with these people.
Yeah,
Like,
yeah. Wipe our hands clean. You know?
yeah, we blew up the flag smashers and we're all the better for it. Like,
Yeah. The other thing too, I thought was kind of interesting, and I don't know why. I watched this episode twice, but Carly dies from a gunshot wound, right? And
yes.
it just seems weird, like thinking of like Captain America, like Steve Rogers being able to die from a gunshot wound. I mean, I'm sure he could. It
Mhm.
just seems like I'm like, what happens if Thanos just pulls out a gun in the final scene and
Right.
shoots Steve? You know, um, which I don't know if it's fair because Steve has the shield, obviously, but I
Mhm.
don't know. I just thought it was kind of a funny way to go for her.
Yeah, no, I think, I mean, ultimately, I think it was going to be a gun, like, because I just, yeah, everything surrounding her death, I was just very apathetic about. It's
Yeah,
like,
and also that's the power broker scene reveal too, or yeah. So that
yeah,
whole
that whole
here's
scene was just kind of,
a wet fart, as you would say.
well, I mean, Carly gets shot like in the stomach, right? Didn't Sharon also just get shot in the stomach too? Like,
Ye- Yeah. Well, I think Carly got multiple wounds.
I guess, yeah,
But
it
you're
just
right though.
feels,
Yeah, Sharon got shot too.
it just feels kind of like, oh boy, Sharon, the non-super soldier of the two of them,
Yeah.
just kind of brushes that off. And
Yeah, I was kind of disappointed that Batroc got killed too. I thought he was a decent enough villain, so
I mean, he was fine. He kind of just felt like the villain of the week. And
yeah. Because he was from Winter Soldier, right?
um, no, I thought he was from the very beginning of this show. He was
No, I mean, yeah, he was there, but he's also a Winter Soldier.
no, was he? Actually, I didn't know or realize that.
Yeah, he was like when Steve goes to that boat, I believe that's the villain he fights.
Oh, interesting. Okay. Oh, like when he's okay. Like that's like the first scene
Yeah. Mhm.
in that movie. Okay, sure.
Yeah.
In yeah, Winter Soldier.
Yeah.
Well, the more you know.
um I know there's been some discussion that COVID was to blame for some of the Flag Smasher stuff going astray. Because if
Mhm.
you remember, like in episode 2, I believe they're transporting some vaccines to some place, and apparently that Mama Danya has to had a bigger role. But with the pandemic, I think they changed the storyline slightly because from what I understand, the GRC was withholding vaccines to this group of people, the the Earth Hand people or something. I don't know, but obviously that was taken out. But I guess that
Mhm.
makes a little bit more sense in context to episode 2.
Sure.
Anyway, the last thing that we're gonna talk about in regards to what I didn't like, and this is
Mhm.
what you will disagree with me about.
Mhm.
Um, I didn't really like the new Captain America outfit. Uh, I think for me it was the tidy whitey material on his head and like the weird little holes in his ear where his ears can come out. I mean, it's hard to make goggles look cool to begin with, but like the weird fabric on his head, I just didn't really like that much. Especially he's like talking to these diplomats with underwear on his head. I'm sorry. Um, also, like I feel like his costume kind of had like these weird fake abs going on. Like I don't know, it just looked kind of weird. Am I wrong?
Well, yeah. Okay. So I do disagree with you, but not entirely. Um, the thing that bothers me about his costume is his shoulders. There's like,
Interesting.
look at like because I think that's what makes it, because it looks big on him.
Yeah, that's what I said too. It looks like it's like a little bit baggy or something. Like it's like too big. Like
And I
to get.
think it's because like those shoulder pads, like they look like they're straight out of the 80s. Like they
They should have given
like
him like high heels.
yeah, right. Like if you pulled those off of his costume and put them into the shoulders of a leather jacket and throw it on an 80s model, like there'd be very little confusion as to what's going on. And I think if they borrowed the design from his Falcon uniform and gone with kind of like the short sleeve look, it still goes over his shoulder, but it ends fairly quickly, fairly early on his arm. I think that would have made it look a lot better, because
Well,
he is fully covered in this thing. Like you
yeah,
see
there's no
his,
skin except like his forehead and his mouth area.
and I think that's what makes it seem kind of weird. Because I mean, this costume is very much like his costume from the comics,
Dude,
and mind
like
you,
think of COVID days. He would literally only have his forehead showing.
I know, right? It just feels really, yeah. Like I don't have a huge issue with the headpiece. I think that's fine. I think it should be a little bit more obvious how he can take the goggles off and maybe wear them on his forehead, because
Here's the issue, I think. So the
mhm,
white goes all the way to his neck, right?
uh-huh,
And like I think they were trying to make sure he didn't have like the Batman thing where he couldn't turn his head, you know?
right,
And so it's like a little loose when he moves his head.
yeah.
I think it just looks weird. I don't know. I just don't like it.
I think what really takes what like I think it took away a little bit from some of the serious moments, because if he'd been able to like remove the goggles or like put them on his head or something, like he would have been able to look Carly Morgenthau in the face while she
Yeah.
died and no one cared. Or he could have looked at the senator during his rousing speech and just like looked him in the eyes rather than be wearing these goggles.
Because I mean, people know who he is. I don't think he ever
Yeah,
had a secret identity. In fact,
no,
I don't
not
think
really.
anyone in the Marvel Cinematic Universe really has the only one that did was Spider-Man, but that's kind of blown now. So
Right. And so so yeah, like I think that overall I think the costume's cool, and I think it's a good representation of Sam Wilson's Captain America uniform from the comics. I just think that yeah, like I think those shoulders have just got to go. Like I think if they remove that bit of it and make it a little bit more of like a short sleeve situation, it would look way better, and I think it would like fit his frame a lot better.
well, they did answer one of our questions we had from last week too, because I was under the impression he wasn't even going to have his wings anymore. But
Hmm.
it's nice to know that he does, because I feel like if he was just a guy with the shield, like John Walker was for a while, I think that would just kind of be kind of boring almost. So I'm
Hmm.
glad they still have him with the wings.
Yeah, and I do have to admit that I was very, very, very wrong in that Sam wouldn't end up being Captain America at the end of the show. I was holding on to that for quite a while. And in the first moments, when you see like Sam from a
Yeah.
distance with his wings, I was like, oh man, is he just going to be Falcon? Like no shield? I don't know.
Then
And
immediately he's
then
like, I'm Captain America.
he flies through the window and it's just like a patriotic explosion. I'm like, fine, he's Captain America now. Like,
Yeah.
not from like, I'm not sad that he's Captain America. I'm just more bummed that I was so wrong. But
Dude, I
um,
this is off topic, but speaking of
mhm.
America, I just finished Broforce this weekend. Oh man, that was a patriotic rush.
Yeah, that game is like, yeah, patriotism explosions. That game.
Um, I guess the one last comment I had, I do find like I do think it's interesting. Interesting. I don't know, but man, I'm starting this off strong. But like Marvel, their costumes tend to have like some padding on them. Like I've noticed that for a while,
Sure.
and I saw someone that did like a Reddit post about it, and apparently that kind of stuff shows up on screen a little bit, like
Hmm.
better. Like it breaks it up a little bit, so it doesn't look like they're wearing like spandex.
Okay.
And it just feels way different than what DC does. I feel like DC, their stuff, they break it up in lines, but their costumes don't feel like padded.
Hmm.
Like clearly Sam has a lot of padding in this. Like that's
Yeah.
not skin tight. But
Right.
in like DC, like most of their costumes are pretty skin tight.
Hmm.
And I don't know, like I usually kind of actually weirdly prefer Marvel's way, I think, but in Sam's case, I kind of wish it was more skin tight. I think it would have looked better.
I don't know. I wouldn't necessarily agree there, only because I think of Ben Affleck's Batman costume. Like he looks huge in that, and I don't think it's because he's that buff. I just think it's like how like padded his costume is. I just think that the padding isn't on the outside of the costume as much as it like appears here.
Okay. Yeah, I could see that. I guess so too. I'm thinking of the boys, and even though that show's satire, but
Hmm.
I'm thinking of like what they wear in that show, and I never really find, even though it is satire, I never really find what they wear laughable. I always think it kind of looks
Hmm.
like cool. Like they look larger than life for some reason in those more skin tight outfits.
No,
But
actually, I do agree with you there. I think the costume designs in the boys is are really good, and yeah, like none of them are really that padded up. Like it usually is like some kind of body armor. Like in the one character I think of that's the most like that is Black Noir. Like he's got, if memory serves, like his costume has like a lot of like kind of armor type plating on it.
yeah,
But like everyone else, yeah, like Homelanders is just like skin tight. Same thing with most other characters.
which
So,
makes sense in the context of the show, because like that shows kind of a critique of like capitalism,
mhm,
and like in that show, I don't get too off topic, but I mean they're literally in movies like as characters that they're playing in real life, and
right.
yeah, and like they're supposed to kind of the way they look is supposed to be marketable in that universe, which is kind of interesting.
No, for sure.
Okay, well, my final thoughts. Okay, I'll just read this out loud. So yeah, it's true. There are moments in this episode where I wanted to give up and tell this show to F off, and that's totally true. There's moments like, okay, this show's an F. But then like it throws out like John Walker and Isaiah Bradley, and I don't think I mentioned it, but that final scene with Isaiah Bradley and like the Smithsonian was really good.
Mm-hmm.
So like I can't really hate it, but I kind of want to, but I just can't. And there's just some parts of the show that are really good and some parts that are just like almost laughably bad.
Sure.
So I guess if I was gonna like rate it, I think at this time it'd probably be like maybe a 6.5 out of 10.
Mm-hmm.
Which I guess what would that'd be like a C, I think. No, that'd be a D. Man, I've been out of school. Maybe that's too hard. I think maybe like C minus. I'm gonna go C minus. So I guess that'd be a 7 out of 10.
Yeah, something like that.
But yeah, so I mean, one thing I really do like about this show too, and these new Marvel shows in general, I do like that they've given us some time to spend with these characters that we didn't really get to spend time with before. So I think when they do pop up again on the big screen or wherever they show up again, maybe in another TV show, I think there's going to be a lot of more excitement to see Sam again on the big screen. And we can talk about that a little bit more. I don't know if I'm necessarily excited to see him in the new Captain America movie, but I would be more excited to see him, I think, like just show up in another Marvel movie.
Right.
But what were your ultimate thoughts, Matt?
I mean, I think you and I have kind of the same final opinion on everything. Like, yeah, I think the big standouts, like emotionally speaking, are like your scenes with John Walker and Isaiah. I think I really liked Bucky in this show. Like, I think his goings on were really interesting, and we got to see more of his background, like, and just things he remembered and all of his regrets from his time as the Winter Soldier. Not that he had a choice in the matter, but he has to live with those memories. And I would agree that like his conversation with Yuri was really like kind of glossed over in a way. They just show you the beginnings of that, and then that's basically all that happens.
Yeah, no, I was thinking like in that scene, I was thinking like Yuri would probably been like, get out of here. I thought that's where that scene would go, honestly, but
yeah, but yeah, like other than that, like I really enjoyed. I think Bucky might be my favorite part, honestly, like just character wise. But yeah, like I think like a C minus is probably fair. Maybe a strong C is a pretty fair grading. Like I think it really excelled in some areas, but I think ultimately there was some, like, just take Carly Morgenthau out. Like I just really think that if you're not going to do the character justice in terms of her character buildup and just like what her motivations are, then just don't put her in. Like,
yeah.
And I know that part of that was outside of Marvel and Disney's control in terms of what was going on in the world, and still is at this time.
Well, you mentioned something too. Like you kind of said that maybe she should have just been evil, and I almost think that would have benefited the show in a way. Like if you just had like I was, instead of like being like kind of like a 5'5" young girl, like why not make it like a 6'5" like muscular Hulk? Like not literally Hulk, but like sort of like this just totally jerk. Like make him look like the Flag Smasher from the comics. I almost would kind of think that'd be sort of cool. And then you'd also have sort of that there'd be a lot of masculine energy, I guess, but like I kind of like that idea more than what we got.
Yeah, no, I think yeah, because I would stand by that. But yeah, like just make her full out evil, or just have a different villain. Because this character did not have to be Carly Morgenthau.
I know, like a lot of the times, actually, when Marvel deviates from the comics, that's when it's not as good. So just like stick with what's in the comics a lot of the time. I think you're going to end up with something even better. Because, well, like what's an example? Like the Mandarin, people were upset about that. I kind of thought it was stupid too. Carly, yeah, like they should have just went with what was in the comics, I think. And even Sharon Carter, like they're kind of deviating from that. So yeah, just go with what's in the comics. That would be my suggestion. I know you're listening, Marvel Studios.
Yeah, I know. They're very regular listeners. Feige and I were on the phone like every day.
Yeah. So looking forward, it looks like the Thunderbolts, I think, will probably be a thing. With Val, Zemo, John Walker. I think the new Black Widow probably from the movie coming up. I think that final scene with Sharon Carter, it was probably setting up the Armor Wars.
Sure.
Which is coming out, I think, next year, 2023.
Something like that. I think it may be 2022, but
Yeah.
I'm not sure off the top of my head.
And also on Friday, they did announce. Well, they didn't. I don't think Marvel's announced it yet, but it was leaked that Captain America 4 is in development with Sam as Captain America, and Malcolm Spellman, who is behind this show, who's the creator and showrunner. He will also be involved with this movie, as well as Dallin Musson. I'm probably saying that name. Dallin Musson, who is the lead writer or the writer for episode 5, which I do think was probably the best episode of the show.
Sure.
So that bodes well. I can't say I'm really that excited for this film if it has the same people behind it. Like, I'll still watch it, but I'm just not that really that excited for it.
It really depends on what the subject matter is going to be, because with most of the Captain America movies, the byline on them has had a lot to do with why people would be excited. Like Captain America, the first Avenger, Captain America, the Winter Soldier, Captain America, Civil War. Like every byline for those movies has been like your big hook. And so what they're going to do, because you can't just call it Captain America 4, or the new Captain America. You got to have your carrot at the end of the stick to kind of be like, oh, this is why we're going into this.
They can't do Nintendo naming conventions. Brand new Captain America.
No, it'll be Captain America you. Yeah, right. Yeah, no, I think
Super Captain America.
Yeah, if and when we get, we will. It'll have a byline on it. They can't.
Yeah, I don't think they've ever just done just 2, except for maybe Guardians of the Galaxy, which I think was Volume 2. But generally, they don't just ever go
at least with the Captain America movies, because Iron Man is just Iron Man 1.
Oh, that's true. Yeah, there is Iron Man 1, 2, and 3. You're right.
But yeah, all the Captain America movies, it's been Captain America : thing, and then so.
What if it's just Captain America :
Yeah, Captain America : just he has issues with his colon in this movie.
Yeah.
I think it'll probably be a good movie.
I've heard people think it might be Serpent Society. I don't really know much about that, but apparently that's the big Captain America enemy that hasn't appeared in the movies yet. So
yeah, I'll be really curious to see what they do. I'm not familiar enough with Captain America in the comics to really have a judgment or an opinion one way or the other.
They also said that the first comic series that Sam was a part of as Captain America was with the Serpent Society as the enemy, so it makes sense.
Yeah, then that tracks. But yeah, like you said, I'll definitely watch it. But I won't say that I'm excited about it yet, because I need my byline. I need to know what my hook is supposed to be.
Yeah. Should we move on to Invincible?
I believe so.
Okay.
Well, yeah. So this most recent episode, I guess I'll throw out my spoiler thing. So if you haven't watched it, don't be dumb. We're talking about big important things. Okay. Here's your warning. All right. Okay, so most recent episode of Invincible was jam-packed, man. Holy hell. They really fucking gave it to us this episode with everything going on.
They didn't even wine us and dine us beforehand.
Yeah, they've been kind of teasing all this stuff so far, but this episode they were just they really they got us and this sexual analogy just needs to stop. But they really seriously like get you to the brink, and then they pull the plug right at the end there with Nolan and everything going on.
And not only that, but also with Robot, because that had been something that had been, developing for a while. Sorry, excuse me.
Yeah,
And that
yeah,
kind of came to somewhat of a head this episode too. So
yeah. Like I've really enjoyed the pacing of the show compared to the comics, because as we've talked about pretty extensively, like the big reveal that Nolan killed the Guardians, that is old news in the comics by the point a lot of this has been reached. Like this whole bit with Robot finally having a human body, or at least a blood, skin and bone body. Um, like that happens ages after that information about Omni-Man has come out, and like so for that to be happening concurrently is very interesting.
yeah, this actually kind of reminds me of The Walking Dead. I don't know if
Hmm.
you ever read those graphic novels, but I remember when that they were coming out, like the TV
Hmm.
show was coming out.
Yeah.
Robert Kirkman, who's also behind Invincible, who wrote Invincible and The Walking Dead,
Hmm.
who was also involved with the show The Walking Dead. I think he was a writer for it. He basically said, yeah, like it's the same thing that's happening with Invincible. Like we'll do we'll it'll have a lot of similarities, but we'll change things up to kind of surprise the audience a little bit. So I think that's what's going on with this.
And I'm a big fan because I really like the comic, but I've been enjoying the show tremendously as well, just for different reasons. And like I think they're doing a really good job of um, bringing the comic to the big screen and to be cutting out some things that maybe weren't as important, or like what comes to my mind immediately is the whole thing with Da Sinclair and the Reaniman, like that whole bit.
Yes,
um
you were worried that wasn't going to come to anything, but I kind of felt like that what's going to happen last episode when Cecil like took
mhm.
him away. He's like, yeah, he's just like scum. I don't even. I kind of felt like he was going to use him for for something like this.
Well, that's what's weird is like they introduced that in the comic, and that storyline has not been revisited yet. They bring it up like so far where I've gotten to in the comic. Like, yeah, there has been no update on that storyline at all. They
Yeah.
bring up the Reanimen, and that's it. And so, like, that's drastically different than what's in the comic. And so, um, that's really interesting, which means that they can do things very, very differently and have it still be cohesive and loyal to the comic. So, um,
Yeah, it's kind of almost like a remix. It seems like
mhm.
it still has most of the same elements, but they've just remixed it a little bit way to make the story maybe a little bit more cohesive.
Hmm. Well, and it makes so much more sense in the like in that this is going to be a season based show rather than like a long issue by issue narrative like it is with the comics. Everything they've set up, they're answering most of those questions, or they're setting up for a future season. So,
Yeah.
but yeah, no, I've been a huge fan of the show. I'm going to be disappointed when there isn't any more Invincible on the air for a while. I'm sure it's been renewed for a season two.
I
If
don't
not,
think it has yet. I don't think it has.
I
So I'm
really,
sure. I bet it will though.
yeah, I really hope it does. Yeah, because I've been more excited about Invincible than I have been about Falcon and the Winter Soldier, quite frankly.
Interesting. Yeah, I mean, I still am attached to the MCU, so I still find myself being more engaged by that universe. But
Mhm.
yeah,
But yeah, I mean that's largely all I have to say about it for now. I'm looking forward to kind of a more in-depth discussion when the finale
yeah,
happens, which will be next week. But
yeah, for sure. Yeah, no, I think as someone who watched it for the first, like seeing these events play out for the first time, because you've obviously read a little bit further ahead than where the show's at. But
mhm.
yeah, the stuff with Robot was pretty interesting. I don't know. I feel I'm less attached to that character than I should be, maybe. So it was kind of like a body horror moment, which I always kind of love body horror stuff.
Mhm.
So I enjoyed that, and I did like Immortal coming back and just getting eviscerated, literally for like the second time was
Right.
pretty fun to watch. Yeah, the Cthulhu monster was pretty interesting. Yeah, that moment where Mark saves his dad when he's about to get eaten. That's pretty that's a pretty dramatic irony sort of situation where
Mhm.
the audience knows something that the character doesn't, which
Right.
is always kind of frustrating, but also good storytelling.
Yeah, no, absolutely. Like Mark doesn't know this deep dark thing that's happening.
Yeah,
And even Eve in that moment assumably knows before Mark does, but what's she gonna do about it, you know?
yeah, and then you had I can't you probably know his name, but the guy that got his basically Omni Man grabbed his spine. Uh, what
Oh, Douglas, right?
Probably. Yeah, that was. I was am kind of shocked when that stuff happens because he's obviously played for comedic relief up until now, basically.
Hmm.
So to see that happen is kind of a little shocking, maybe more shocking than other stuff that's happened in the show. Um,
Yeah, they there's a thing that gets revealed in the comics about him, like about that character specifically that um like is contradictory to what happened in the show with him, because the fact that Omni-Man, kind of kills him dead, um or he I guess he does ultimately kill himself with a bomb,
yeah,
um but like in the comics he's basically a robot. Like he has weapons in his arms, like he literally like has machine guns hidden in his arms that come out. And so
huh.
and he's still around in the comic too, so
Well, it could. I mean, who knows? Maybe he will come back as like a robot.
yeah, that's kind of what I'm maybe imagining. Is I mean, he seemed pretty well and done vaporized, so maybe it's more of like a clone situation. I don't know.
Yeah,
Cecil just really likes him, so he keeps clones of him around. Who knows? But
I could see something like that happening because clearly clones are a thing in this
the
universe. So
right, and honestly, I've really enjoyed the Mahler twins, like in all their versions, both in the comic and in the show. Like they're just a very funny pair, um, or even when there's only one of them. Like,
yeah,
but
yeah, they're kind of anthetic, like I don't know if this is the right word. Antithetical. Anyway, they're not really
mhm,
what you would usually think of when you think of like like kind of like a mad scientist, sort of extremely intelligent. They're obviously like super buff and
mhm,
kind of monsters for they're big guys. They don't look like your typical really smart villain. So
right, yeah, no, like just and they have a huge part to play in the comic too that hasn't even been sussed out at all,
oh
and in the show, and I'm assuming that'll be maybe brought up in season two. It's an entirely different storyline. That's very very different from what's going on right now. So
yeah. I mean, I think this definitely the strongest episode since the season premiere. So I really enjoyed it. I was engaged the entire time, pretty glued to the screen. So it was pretty good.
sure, sure.
Um, yeah, I guess let's just move on. I think we're getting near the end here, so we'll just kind of go through some of the major news that came out this week, dealing mostly with superheroes, but I think we got a few Star Wars things thrown in there as well.
All right, so I guess our final topic today will be just kind of talking about what's been going on in the news regarding movies and shows. Some reveals like this teaser trailer we're looking at now of Shang-Chi.
Shang-Chi.
I know that after having watched that trailer, that I am pretty excited about that movie. I really can't think of the last time I watched um, um, like a movie with such strong Asian influences, especially like in the realm of like movies that are very focused on martial arts. Like the thing that comes to my mind immediately is like Crouching Tiger, Hidden Dragon, and that was from quite a while ago. So
I mean, have you seen Mulan?
no, I haven't seen the newest one, and I don't plan to actually.
Yeah, I wouldn't recommend it. Um, yeah, it seems like Hollywood likes to do this every once in a while, where they bring out like a kind of a East Asian sort of themed action thriller,
Hmm.
so or movie. I don't know. I really maybe this is weird to say, but I really like a lot of like I really liked Crazy Rich Asians when it came out. I thought it was a really good movie. So,
Sure.
and then another one that I thought was pretty good was with who played he was in WandaVision. I can't remember the
Oh,
actor's name right now.
I know
But,
exactly who you're talking about.
but he was in a
Asian
movie.
Jim.
Oh yeah, yeah. He's in Never Have I Ever. I think is what it was, something like that. Or no, You'll Always Be My Maybe. That
Yes, I was
was
actually just going to say that movie is fantastic.
yeah, yeah. There's definitely a cameo in that movie that I wouldn't want to spoil necessarily. So,
Hmm. Yeah.
uh, but yeah, I'm excited about this movie. I guess what I mentioned here is like I do wonder if they're not trying to have like another Black Panther moment, Marvel that is, except kind of
Hmm.
like within another culture or demographic of people.
Hmm.
Which I'm just being maybe cynical there. I still think I'm excited for this. So
Yeah, no, I mean, I think like when it comes to the diversity of the cast of characters in the MCU, like you definitely have a lot of uh white men and women.
are
But
there
then
have there been any Asian superheroes in the
so
Marvel Cinematic Universe so far?
yeah, like I was gonna, basically be what I said is that like we don't really have any Asian superheroes in the MCU thus far. Like
Yeah.
the one exception to that would be one of Thor's former, or
Oh,
not former, but like one of his friends
and
of
Doctor
the
Strange has someone too.
oh yeah, yeah, no,
Chang.
his
Is it Chang? Is that right? Wong.
Wong, yeah.
Yeah.
um yeah, and like outside of more tertiary characters, there hasn't been like a headliner
Yeah.
for the Asian community. And so I think for Shang-Chi to be coming out now is super cool. And it's like, I don't know, when you were talking about like She-Hulk earlier, regarding like kind of the new Hulk replacement perhaps that could be happening with like this more diversifying of the cast. I was almost thinking of like Totally Awesome Hulk from kind of more recently in the
Yeah.
comics.
Is that Amadeus Cho? Is that
Yeah,
right?
Amadeus Cho, like
Yeah.
that. I think that would be like a really
Yeah.
cool
Well, in a way
addition as
too, I
well.
don't
But
really think She-Hulk was ever like a replacement for the Hulk. She was always kind of her own character, to
her
be
own,
fair
yeah,
about it.
no, for sure.
Yeah.
But I think uh I don't think you're wrong though, and that might be the direction they're going with her possibly, because having like Hulk already is kind of an interesting issue to have in the movies, because when you have a character as strong as Hulk, it's like you have to figure out how to play around with the villains in that regard.
Yeah.
And so to have two of them running around, like that just increases that problem exponentially.
Well, they're bringing back Abomination for the Thunderbolts
Hmm.
from the
Oh
first
yeah,
Incredible Hulk movie. So I think they're actually literally bringing back that actor. And I think he's
that,
going to be I think he's going to be in She-Hulk as well. Am I wrong about that?
that would be interesting.
I
I'm
know they're bringing him back. I just can't remember what context they are. I thought he was going to be part of the Thunderbolts, but I also think he's going to be the new She-Hulk show.
see. I thought that mind you, I don't have any official um, like knowledge of a lot of this, but my knowledge of comic stuff off the top of my head, I was almost imagining with Thunderbolts that they would have General Ross come in as Red Hulk. But
We're gonna find out right now, Matt, because
yeah.
I can't remember that actor's name either, which is kind of bugging me because he's a good actor. Oh
Hmm.
shoot, I should have done the TV show. I'm just gonna put in the Incredible Hulk, and hopefully that'll get me what I need. Because he's like in Pulp Fiction. He's been in a lot of good stuff, and I just
Hmm.
trying to blank on what his name is. Um, Tim Roth.
Tim Roth, right, yeah, because he, yeah, and I did like, I mean, that movie. I actually kind of enjoyed that movie. I don't know if it's
Yeah,
received very well.
yeah. He's gonna be
Um,
in She-Hulk. Yep.
so he is going to be. Oh yeah, and he's exactly the same character. Wow, that's like the strongest tie
Yeah.
to that movie that's been made in quite a while.
Yeah.
'Cause
Well,
I
I mean,
think,
because they General Ross was originally from that movie as well.
mhm. Yeah,
I
well,
would
yeah,
wonder. I would like them to bring back Liv Tyler too as Betty Ross. That'd be kind of cool.
yeah, she hasn't been. Actually, yeah, I'd be down for that. There'd be
Yeah.
some interesting, because now that, I mean, if Black Widow's out of the picture with with like the Banner and Natalie romance that was kind of being
Yeah.
made a thing, it'd be kind
My
of cool to bring
headcanon
back
is sort
Betsy.
of like that the Incredible Hulk like doesn't even exist in the universe anymore just because it was a totally different lead actor.
Right.
It just doesn't like they still have like connections to it, but it just doesn't seem and weirdly enough, like I remember the Incredible Hulk is a kind of a weird pseudo sequel to like Hulk, like that
Hmm.
other movie that came out.
Yeah, with
With
shoot,
yeah, I can't
what
remember
was
his
it?
name right now either, but
But
it's
yeah.
directed since you brought up Crouching Tiger, Hidden Dragon, it was directed by Ang Lee. Who also
Oh yeah,
directed
that's right.
yeah. Anyway, we're way off topic. Anyway, yes, I am excited for this movie, and it's
Hmm.
coming out. Hopefully, it keeps its release window, which I think it's September 9th.
Hmm.
Which like with they've been slowly pushing all these movies back, and I think it will come out on Disney Plus. Was that announced? I know Black Widow is going to come out on Disney Plus at the same time. So
Yeah, I don't know about Shang-Chi on that front,
yeah,
but I am
either.
excited for it.
Michael Keaton. So we talked about this on the last episode. It
Hmm.
has been officially confirmed that he will be back as part of the sequel to, or as the Flash movie that's coming out. This is going to be based on Flashpoint. So that's wild. I think that's pretty cool. I'm excited for it.
Hmm. No, I think that's awesome. Yeah, I mean, Michael Keaton is a fantastic actor, as I think most people know, and for him to get to reprise this role as Batman
See, this is what I'm talking
in,
about not being able to move his head. So
right? Yeah, yeah. Like I think that'll be really cool. Um, like what exactly the full movie is going to be like, but just knowing this, I'm excited for it. Like it's going to
yeah,
be a multiverse, man. I love
it's
multiverse
just
stuff.
such an insane idea, and it's like one of those things that I know Warner Bros. Knows this is going to get some butts in the seats because it's just a wacky, crazy idea, and those everyone just assumes those movies, those early '90s movies, are gone and that they're never going to be reprised again, and
Hmm.
but to make them relevant to a new generation and to bring that literal character back to the
Hmm.
new DC, it's just such a crazy idea, and like it's really cool. And I don't know why, like it seems like both Marvel and DC are doing that currently, where they're bringing in characters from these other universes that aren't official, part of the official canon, but they're
Hmm.
still bringing them in. It's still really like fun and a cool development that they're both doing. So
Yeah, I think it's the studios having some fun with the properties in ways that are, I think, really like not only acceptable but encouraged by the audience, and by fans of the properties.
yeah, I just never think we were going to get to the stage of like these universes where they can like literally bring in, pick and choose elements of like the old stuff that they want to include, and
Hmm.
people are not only encouraging it, but the general audience, I don't know how much they understand it, but they're accepting of it, which is a really
Hmm.
cool development. And I just got to think it has to do something with like just our age right now. I feel like we live in a a remix society or a mixtape society where we just like pick and choose things that we want to like believe in. It's just kind of interesting. We're very postmodern in this way. So
Yeah,
um
no, I'm a
I,
big fan of this news. I think like more keep it coming. Like I want,
yeah.
like, bring back all this old pop culture stuff, like Michael Keaton getting to be Batman again. Like,
Well, I mean, I think Marvel's gonna reveal their hands with the next Spider-Man movie on how much they're actually going to include a multiverse. And
hmm,
because the rumors have it is that Green William Defoe's Green Goblin
yeah, it's
is
gonna
going to
be.
be the main villain of the movie.
Oh god, that'd be so good.
Yeah. So that's pretty wild. I don't think anyone would have expected anything like that just like a few years ago that they would even consider something like that. So
Oh yeah, I mean, like the Avengers and the success of that franchise has opened up so many possibilities for the world of movies in terms of just, who can be in what. And the fact that there are multiverses in both of Marvel and DC just means you can get
Yeah.
really creative with who comes and who goes.
And I do really hope, just because they gave me a taste, that they somehow fix the Ralph Boner thing. I just really want them to. Please, Marvel, fix it.
I know. Hopefully, we can hope, man.
um,
Quicksilver, bring him back.
Another piece of news. So, Emilia Clarke, which I hope I'm pronouncing that name correctly. For some reason, I always kind of want to say Emil. Anyway,
Emilia.
Amelia. Sorry,
Mhm.
Emilia Clarke. I think is what it is, right?
Yep.
Amelia. Yeah. So she's cast in the upcoming Disney Plus Marvel TV program Secret Wars. Secret
Mhm.
Wars.
Secret
Um,
Invasion.
Secret Invasion. Dang, thanks for saying that, Matt, because like I titled it wrong here. I think I'm getting it conflated with Armor Wars or.
Armor Wars. Yeah.
Um, but yeah, I think my main comment was just watching all these Game of Thrones actors like getting Marvel roles, because you had Peter Dinklage as Etri, who's a
Mhm.
giant dwarf in. I keep thinking like that's like derogatory, but no, he literally played a giant dwarf character. He was a dwarf, like that's what
Yep.
he was.
Right.
Sorry, that is not that is who he was in that movie.
Mhm.
Richard Madden, who played Rob Stark, is going to be Icarus in the upcoming Eternals,
Mhm.
and Kit Harington will reunite with his brother from that show as Dane Whitman in the Eternals, and yeah, Amelia will now be in this, and I'm probably forgetting someone. I'm just like thinking like other actors who I would like to see appear in Marvel, like the guy that played Sandor Clegane. I would be down for that. I think if he played the freaking Flag Smasher character, that'd be so cool.
That would be really cool, actually. I could see that.
Yeah.
I
Oh
think
man, that'd be so sweet. I don't know if he'd want to, but yeah, I would be down for that.
I mean, there's a lot of talent to pull from the Game of Thrones cast that could be like really cool additions. I know that this is another like small rabbit hole that we don't have to jump down, but um, the gentleman who played oh shoot um, oh my god, why am I spacing on his
Give me a
name?
clue. Give me a clue. I can.
Jorah Mormont.
Yeah, I was kind of thinking of him too.
Yeah, he plays Bruce Wayne, aka Batman, in the Titans DC show, and it's the most awkward casting choice I've ever seen for Batman, and because you do not see him in the Batman costume once in the entirety of the show. He's
Huh.
always just Bruce Wayne. And if he is Batman in that moment, like it's always him in shadows or like in a pile of rubble. It's never just like him in the costume because he would look so silly in a Batman costume.
Yeah, he's like he doesn't have the right build for it. He's a little bit too thin or something, I think.
Yeah, and even as Bruce Wayne, like he's got like the air about him, but he doesn't have the physicality of it at all.
Yeah.
So,
I'm
um,
like kind of thinking like a few of like the, because there's a few really interesting looking um actors from that, like the guy that played Barris. Like I think he could play like a good like X-Men character maybe.
mhm. Oh man, the X-Men just opens up so many slots, in the
Yeah.
roster. Like
I
there
mean,
are
and like
so many different X-Men.
a few of those actresses, thinking specifically like Sophie Clark, I believe, and
Hmm. Maisie Williams.
Maisie Williams are both X-Men, or they played mutants. So
Oh yeah, that's true. Yeah, I don't necessarily love yeah, Sophie Turner returning as
Sophie
like
Turner, Sophie, man, I'm doing terrible.
yeah, like returning as like Jean Grey. I don't love that notion, but
Yeah, she didn't really have the right aura of the character for me personally, but I do think she could play another character, and I wouldn't mind it.
God, is that movie with Maisie Williams, like has that come out? I feel like
Uh,
that movie was in like movie hell for a long time.
I think I saw it. I think you can watch it on HBO Max because they had originally Fox had a deal with HBO to release their movies there, so I think you can technically watch it on HBO Max.
Okay, so it did get released.
Yeah.
Because I know that like I remember seeing I felt like a madman the first time I saw a preview for that in a theater. back when that was a thing.
Yeah.
And
Well, I mean, think about like Black Widow though. That movie was supposed to come out like a year ago. Yeah.
right, but like that movie, like I saw trailers for it, and then but like I keep hearing things about it. And then when I first saw that trailer for that
Yeah.
movie, like it just disappeared.
Well, and I think part of the reason is because Marvel or sorry, Disney didn't. I don't know. Maybe they didn't really know what to do with the film because they knew they were basically going to kill off
Yeah,
like
that
the X-Men
universe.
verse. So, and that was kind of the last one that was made before that happened.
But
So
but
I think they
anywho,
just didn't know
yeah,
what to do with it.
our random tangents. But yeah, no, I welcome more Game of Thrones actors in the MCU. There's lots of room, so we can make that.
Yeah,
They can
bring
make
them
that happen.
on. Yeah, Ryan Johnson, rumored to direct or wants to direct a Mandalorian episode apparently.
Darling
And
of the film industry, Ryan Johnson wants to direct a Mandalorian episode.
well, his films generally are met with like good reviews, like Knives Out, which was a fine movie. I didn't love it. That's kind of the weird thing about Ryan Johnson. And so if you don't know, he directed The Last Jedi, which was the middle movie of the new Star Wars trilogy, and probably the one that is the most controversial.
Yes.
Which I don't think is. I think that's very fair to say. Like I know people that absolutely despise that movie. They still despise it to this day.
Mm-hmm.
But he's directed like Knives Out, and he directed the movie. I'm doing so bad today. That's Bruce Willis and
Joseph Gordon-Levitt.
yes, that's the one.
You're thinking of Looper.
Looper. Yeah, something about his films, like I can recognize they're really well made,
Mm-hmm.
but I just can't connect to them for some reason. I
don't know. I really, yeah, like I would agree. I think Ryan Johnson is from all accounts, based on his internet presence and generally his comments on things, is kind of a dick. But he's a good filmmaker. Yeah, I think that we could literally do an entire podcast episode, if not an entire podcast, on just Star Wars and this
Yeah.
and just the trilogy in question that we're talking about.
Yeah.
But I think in terms of the newest trilogy of Star Wars movies, I don't think any of them were really that good. But that if you look at the movies by themselves, I think The Last Jedi, like stands out as a movie that stands on its own really well.
And I think that's its main issue. And I know we'll get into like this huge long conversation about this if we're not careful.
Yeah.
But I think like the movie is actually pretty good if you look at it like as just a critique on Star Wars. Like if it was just in a vacuum, or sorry, that doesn't make much sense. If it wasn't part of like the main Skywalker storyline and it was just like its own thing, I think it would be fine. But as part of like the middle section of like a trilogy, and it doesn't work.
Yeah, the way I always describe it is that like it's a good movie, but it's not a good Star Wars movie.
Yeah.
But yeah, without getting too far into that. That being said, I think Ryan Johnson in general is a good director.
Yeah.
Like you mentioned, Knives Out, really enjoyed that movie.
And
Looper,
Breaking Bad episodes were like very well thought of.
Mm-hmm.
That's what I knew him mostly before any of this happened with Star Wars, was his Breaking Bad episodes.
And I think that like in the context of a show, like he has room to stretch his legs creatively and to make something unique that like has his vibe to it without ruining the entire damn thing. You know what I mean? Like,
yeah, it's almost better that he's relegated to just a single episode of The Mandalorian. You know, like he's not giving creative control of like the whole ship.
Exactly. Yeah, because I think that was the problem with Last Jedi. That like I think a dinner table got set out by JJ Abrams? No,
yep.
By Abrams, and then Ryan Johnson came to the party late and took a dump on the table.
Basically, yeah.
And
then that's really good metaphor, because then for the Last Skywalker or whatever, what the fuck the movie's called. It was like JJ Abrams trying to like clean up the poop and just like smearing it into like into like the cloth.
No, 100%. Yeah, like I think that's if J.J. Abrams had been in charge of all three of those movies, then it would have been a very differently received, still bad, but differently received trilogy.
Yeah. Did you
But with
see that they're like trying to do like release the JJ cut of like of the Return of Sky? What is that movie called again? Why am I trying to blank on it?
Rise of Skywalker.
Rise of Skywalker. Yeah, they're trying to do release the JJ cut because apparently there's like a 4-hour version of that film out there somewhere. I don't know.
Dude, I'm so over this new trilogy of Star Wars that I could give less of a shit about that movie. I don't care. Keep it in the vault for all I care. Like I would watch it if it got released, but I'm not going to have the same excitement as I did
I barely had
because
excitement when that's like the first Star Wars movie that I was not excited to see was the Rise of
Mhm.
Skywalker.
Yeah, well, and it was because of Last
The
Jedi.
Last Jedi.
This is
Yeah.
us getting into this discussion we said we wouldn't get into, but but yeah, no, I am in favor of Ryan Johnson directing an episode of The Mandalorian. I think that would be cool. He's kind of a dick, but he's got an eye to him in terms of directing, and I think putting him in charge of an episode would be a good addition to a season of The Mandalorian.
Yep. Let's just leave it at that before
Yeah, but
we're like Alice falling down the rabbit
yeah,
hole.
the Star Wars rabbit hole.
Yeah. This is a huge piece of news. It's also in a little bit of inside baseball, but um Disney struck a deal with Sony, and so it looks like the Spider-Man movies will be coming to Disney Plus, which for me like is awesome. I don't know why. It's like I think it's like the Pokemon collector in me. Like it's the
Mhm,
gotta have it all. Like I want all the Pokemon in one Pokédex. It's kind of
mhm.
like the same
Right.
for like the Spider-Man. Like I'm happy that he's coming to Disney Plus. It's kind of weird. It's kind of confusing. Like I don't 100% understand. So it looks like Netflix will have like the first window of movies that Sony releases between 2022 and 2026. So
Mhm,
they'll get those movies, I believe, for the first 18 months after they get released in theaters. I believe it's either 18 months or 9 months.
mhm,
And it goes into it more here, I do believe. But after that window's over, all the Sony films will be going to both Disney and Hulu. And to be honest with you, I kind of almost prefer that it just Disney Plus just remains for Disney movies. So I'm
mhm,
hoping like Jumanji and like I don't know Ghostbusters, whatever. Like those films, I would prefer they go to Hulu versus Disney. But
mhm.
I want the Spider-Man stuff on Disney Plus underneath the Marvel banner.
Sure.
That's just my preference.
And I mean, I don't know. I don't know if I have a strong opinion on it one way or the other. Like a lot of these goings on between studios is like cryptic and confusing for no reason other than that it's business and it's something that they've been like just the industry has been doing for so long that it makes very little sense to anyone outside of that sphere. Um, so where they
But
ultimately end up, as long as they're accessible to people, is the big thing.
well, I think the other exciting part of this too is that it makes it pretty obvious that Sony and Disney are still on
Hmm.
good terms with each other, and the relationship they have for Spider-Man
Hmm.
will continue into the future. And it almost looks like to me that Marvel Studios might even be kind of like they're like these movies that Sony's releasing, like
Hmm.
Venom and I think Mobius is the other one they're working on, and they're also working on Venom 2.
Hmm.
They might like be on the periphery of actually being canon within the MCU. And I think that we don't know that for sure yet, but I think
Hmm.
there's some potential there for what's going to happen. Also, I
Yeah.
think it might bode well too that since we know that the Spider-Man 3 coming up at the end of the year is going to be a multiverse movie, that maybe
Hmm.
that's almost Disney's like, okay, we know this is going to be a multiverse movie, so if we're going to be promoting this crap, we want to make sure that if people want to go rewatch these films, they have to go to our platform to do it.
Right. And I think that that's a strong move on their part. And I have my misgivings about the Sony movies being brought into the MCU because you have this somewhat like you have this kind of a living masterpiece that has been brought to
Yeah.
life by Disney and Marvel at this juncture. That is the MCU. Like, it's been a lot of moving parts that has painstakingly taken a long time to put together. And then your trashy cousin from down the block decides to come to the party, and that's Sony's movies. Like, their movies are not nearly as strong on their own, or even together, quite frankly. So I think it behooves Sony to be a part of this, only in that, like, they get to they get some of the fame on the outside, or like on the outskirts of all this.
Yeah, this is a really good situation, I think, for Sony to be in, because you
Mhm.
gotta think like every single studio out there wants their own version of MCU, but Sony's really the only one that can be like, can we play in your universe a little bit here? I think they're the only ones that really can do that. And
Mhm.
Sony, I think, is like they are kind of playing the field right now. Like they don't have their own platform. They don't have a Paramount Plus or a Peacock,
Right.
stupid name. So they like
Yes.
kind of get to shop around a little bit and make some quality deals with the big players. So good on them.
Well, yeah, they like, I think in terms of like film studios, like, they're Marvel has all this pedigree, and so does like DC and Warner Brothers. Sony, like, their dad works at Nintendo, if you will. So like, they get to
Yeah.
come along for the ride. Like, they have the Spider-Man copyright, and so they're able to, or the rights to Spider-Man, so they're able to be a part of all of this. And I know Disney desperately wants them out of the equation, but they know they can't get rid of them that easily, at least not yet. So,
Yeah. Well, from what I understand too, so I'm not an expert on this, but Sony for a while was in a pretty like their movies weren't doing that great, but I think they had a few good like
high
high
grossing.
yeah, grossing. I think Jumanji did really well. I think there's a few other ones that did pretty well, but
Hmm.
and Sony, Sony is obviously a Japanese country or sorry, company.
Hmm.
And I think really it's Columbia Pictures, really that's their major studio there, which is
Hmm.
owned by Sony. So kind of forgot where I was going with this, but yeah,
No,
Sony,
yeah,
Sony, good.
I don't know how I feel about like the Sony movies being more canon with the MCU,
And
but
I'll be clear too, that's not like confirmed or anything. That's
yeah.
just
Well, I mean, I think that's a pretty easy connection to make, though. Like, if they're working that closely together, and like those movies are going to be available on Disney platforms at some point, like, where you, I think it's a really easy thread to, to
yeah.
pull to go in that direction. It makes a lot of sense. So, especially with, yeah, like a multiverse Spider-Man movie on the horizon. So,
Yeah. Well, I another interesting thing too I heard, which someone made a comment on Reddit and I kind of liked it, was with Spider-Man 3 coming out, and it's pretty well thought that they're going to include like Andrew Garfield and Tobey Maguire in that
mhm,
film as alternative Spider-Mans from the past, from another multiverse. That maybe what
mhm,
will happen is that Tom Holland's version of Spider-Man will be associated with the MCU, but then maybe Sony will have their own Spider-Man. Maybe it'll be Tobey Maguire or Andrew Garfield that they'll
mhm.
they'll start making new movies with, um, which could be basically with this multiverse movie. It seems like they're really setting up like more freedom to be able to do different things.
Hmm.
So
Yeah. No, I think I mean, I would really love for them to um do a Miles Morales live action, because I
I
know
bet they
that
do. I think they will
the
probably.
Into the Spider-Verse movie was fantastic.
Yeah.
Um and I don't know if I'd necessarily want like a live action version to like overtake that,
Well,
but I
I
think
don't
it would
think
be
like
cool to have
I
it be
don't think
associated.
Miles Morales would necessarily fit in the MCU at this point, just based on where Peter Parker is at in his like
Oh yeah,
storyline.
he's still really fresh, and so I
Yeah.
think there's a lot to do there. But anywho.
And then the last thing we got today, unless we get entirely derailed, which again is very possible knowing us. So yeah, it looks like and this is a rumor. This hasn't been confirmed, but there's a lot of positive thought about this, and a lot of people think this is going to happen. that Marvel plans to bring back Jessica Jones, Daredevil, Punisher, and Kingpin actors from the Netflix uh, Marvel television shows into the MCU. And it seems like what'll happen with this is that they'll still be playing the same characters, but they won't necessarily still have the same past, as because Marvel doesn't have ownership, as far as I understand, of those Netflix shows entirely. So they can't make reference to them necessarily. And since Marvel Studios is more of a PG-13 demographic at the moment anyway, as far as I'm aware, I mean, it looks like Deadpool will probably be rated R, but I don't know necessarily if that's where these characters will fit in at this point in this with the studio. So yeah, so it looks like what's his name? Charlie Cox. Yeah, and he's rumored to also appear in the next Spider-Man movie briefly as Peter Parker's lawyer, which I think is kind of cool. John Bernthal as the Punisher, Christian Ritter as Jessica Jones, and Vincent. Oh man, I'm gonna mispronounce this. D'Onofrio as Kingpin or Wilson Fisk. So I think that's pretty cool. I hope that does happen. I think a lot of people are really clamoring for that to happen, and I think would be great, honestly, to see these characters back. I know for me, like I don't even mind seeing the actor that played. Oh, here's another Game of Thrones actor.
Yeah,
and
that would be Finn Jones.
Finn Jones and who played Luke Cage?
Shoot. And
it doesn't really matter. Anyway, so yeah, so these guys aren't necessarily coming back. I think they should just bring them all back personally. But
Mike Coulter.
Mike Coulter, yeah. I don't see why they shouldn't bring them all back. I mean, I don't necessarily think anything was the actor's fault. With Iron Fist, I just think it was the direction and the writing. So
yeah, I don't know. I wasn't a huge fan of him as Iron Fist, but though he was a lot better, in my opinion, in the Defenders series than he was in his own series as an Iron Fist. But yeah, I think the Luke Cage, yeah, like Mike Coulter as Luke Cage was great. Jessica Ritter, I've really enjoyed. Jessica Jones,
Kristen Ritter.
Christian Ritter, like, and then yeah, Charlie Cox. I think he is the main reason why any of these other shows even had a chance at being made in the first place. Because Daredevil season 1 was great. So, yeah, I'd be really happy for them to be brought into the fold on the MCU. The MCU is getting so big at this point; it's kind of crazy. Just how large the group of actors that's associated has gotten. But
these guys, I think, I know Daredevil has a like a hidden, like his real name is hidden. I think he might be like one of the few that would be in the Marvel universe that does have his name, like as like an alternative personality. I don't know. I'm drawing a blank on that phrase, but
secret identity.
Secret identity, yeah.
Yeah, no, I mean that would be interesting because most of the other characters don't have that. But yeah, because like Luke Cage is literally just himself, and then same thing with Jessica Jones.
Yeah. Heroes for hire.
Yeah, right. Now, yeah, I would enjoy them to be brought into the fold. I think most of the actors, with my one personal exception being Finn Jones, I was not a huge fan of him, but it would make sense if the rest of them got brought in that he would also make the cut. So with that exception of my own, yeah, I think that would be a really awesome thing to happen. Like we're the comic book universe in terms of the films and shows that are available now has gotten so big, and I only want to see it get bigger because there's so many cool stories to tell. So
yeah, it is kind of interesting how this stuff kind of plays out sometimes, because you think at like the beginning of the MCU, a lot of those characters were, they weren't necessarily A-listers, but they got their own movies because Marvel just didn't have access to their most popular franchises essentially. But because they were so successful, those former like B-listers and C-listers have become A-listers now. But then like you see what happened with Netflix, because like especially Daredevil there, he he was pretty close to an A-lister, I would say at one point, if not
Mhm,
like a B+ lister, because he had his own film, with
mhm.
Ben Affleck is his who was playing him, and there's even
Th-
like an Electra spinoff. So he was
Yes.
he wasn't on the same level as like Spider-Man or X-Men or the Fantastic Four or the Hulk, which were like the big Marvel properties back in the day, but
Mhm,
he's popular enough to get his own movie. And I think now, like, Marvel is having all these TV shows, but for a long time they didn't have access to him because of the deal with Netflix that they made before they were making their own TV shows.
mhm.
It's just interesting. Of all the characters that they have access to, that he's not in the universe yet is just kind of. I guess he technically is because I don't think they've decanonized Marvel television yet, but in my mind, I don't see it being as canonized. But
Yeah. Well, I mean, they essentially they've been canonized, or they're part of the canon only in that they pretty regularly make reference, especially in like Jessica Jones, to the events of the first Avengers movie in New York. They talk about that with some frequency, and so the movies do get mentioned. They even, I think,
oh
there's
yeah,
even
yeah.
some like subtle hints to like talking about Hulk without talking about him directly.
Yeah, they
You know,
call him the big green guy, I think.
yeah, the big green
Because
guy.
I mean,
Yeah.
I've seen them too, and yeah, at the time they were canon, but the movies never referenced the shows. Just the shows referenced the movies,
Hmm.
and the shows, all of them up until Marvel Studios started making their own TV shows, was by some an entity called Marvel Television, which was actually that was run by Jeff Loeb, who's a pretty
Hmm.
famous comic book writer in his own right. He wrote some pretty famous Batman stories. Um, but yeah, so now that Marvel Television is no longer a thing,
Hmm.
now it's just only done by Marvel Studios, which I think is overall going to be a positive. So I just
Yeah.
found it interesting that Daredevil still is kind of in a weird nebulous area where he may or may not be in the Marvel universe right now, or the Marvel Cinematic Universe. I personally kind of consider him not being in the Marvel Cinematic Universe at this point until he's brought into one of the Marvel Studio uh, productions. But
Oh yeah. No, I would agree. I think he's not there yet, but I think Marvel Studios would be they would it would be I think it would be a bad judgment call on their part to not use Charlie Cox and like the character that he's built through through the Netflix series to not take advantage of that would seem like a huge mistake. But um, one that I don't think that they'll be making. I think that will happen. When is that'll just be up to question for the time being.
well, like I said, it appears that he will be in Spider-Man 3.
Hmm.
No Way Home, I think is what it is. So, yeah,
Yeah.
I'm hoping that's true. I think
Mhm.
that'd be pretty crazy.
Yeah.
But there's been a lot of unsubstantiated rumors before that did not come true. So you can't bank on it. I mean, we all thought Doctor Strange was going to be in WandaVision. So I really did think he was going to be in WandaVision, but that didn't happen. So,
No. But yeah, no. I think that's an interesting little roundup on the news there.
yeah.
And with that, I think we have officially reached the end of this episode of the Nerds of the North podcast. Unless you have anything else you'd like to add.
No, I think we did a good job today with covering just about everything. So,
Cool. Well, I'd like to thank everyone for joining us today on this episode 8 of the Nerds of the North podcast. Thank you so much for listening. At some point, we're actually going to be releasing these, so hopefully we can have some more active discussions going on with people that aren't named Matt or Nick. So with that, thank you all for listening, and we'll catch you guys in the next episode.
bye, everyone.